Do you ever put off decluttering because you feel like it's going to take forever? After years of decluttering my own home, I totally get it. But today I'm showing you how I cleared out multiple categories in just 1 hour, so you can see how you can make progress without losing your entire day. The first category was something I love decluttering whenever possible. When we first started decluttering, money was a huge motivator for us. I mean, it still is, but at that time, we were in those early stages of early marriage and parenting where everything felt so expensive. So anytime we could get rid of stuff and also make a little cash, that was a huge win for us. The first thing we decluttered on this particular day was an air compressor. Honestly, I didn't even know we own one and I have no idea what it does. But I quickly learned that it was worth over $100. And this is the perfect example of what I call the things we can get money for category. But to make it worth my time, I try to use 4 sort of guidelines when I'm selling my old clutter. Number 1, I try to only sell things that are worth over around $40. Number 2 is I only try to sell like 1 or 2 things at once. In the past, I have tried to sell like 10 things in one day and post them and take the pictures and do the description, and it was too overwhelming in one day for me. Number 3 is I price low because our things are inevitably worth much less than we think they are. Number 4 is I usually try to donate things after about a month if they don't sell, unless it's something really valuable. In 4 weeks, if it hasn't sold, I get it out. If extra cash excites you, this is a great place to start. So after spending about 15 minutes posting the air compressor, I kept going. When the urge to purge hits, I tend to go back to certain areas that I call reoccurring spaces. These are basically areas in our home that often build up with clutter and have to be tackled regularly. And I love these spaces because they require almost no thought. For us, one of those spaces is our kids' craft drawers, which is the second thing I decluttered on this day. Essentially, each child has a drawer for their notepads, activity books, coloring pages, stickers, all that kind of stuff, which has worked really well for our family. So what makes this space so easy to declutter? Because 9 times out of 10, the items are similar, the process is similar, and what we get rid of is similar. It's mostly paper recycling or garbage and a little bit of donations. And after years of this, I know exactly what items the kids love and what they'll use, and I can almost always guess what they're gonna get rid of. And it's such an easy one for the kids to practice with. You'll see here that Annie Rose started out with me, but quickly got distracted by making bracelets, which was totally fine. Having spots like this that we regularly declutter is great practice for us and for the kids without the feeling of being overwhelmed. It's not too much pressure. We ended up getting rid of paper, activity books, a binder, and even a little storage folder that we used on trips for years, but they've now sort of outgrown. I didn't record it, but the next day we tackled Leo's drawer as well. And after I pulled everything out and sorted it, I'm not exaggerating, it took under 15 seconds for him to decide what to keep or go. If you have spaces like this that gather clutter over and over again, that's normal. And having to do regular declutter sounds annoying, but the more I've done it, the easier it's become. Next up is something I have never decluttered in my entire life. Over the summer, my in-laws have our kids a few days here and there to help us with childcare while they're off school. And one of the days they had them this past summer, they had them down at our waterfront park in our area, and they had one of those games to sort of like guess how many jelly beans are in the jar sort of thing. So of course my kids wanted to guess, and by sheer luck or maybe skill, Leo won the prize. He guessed how many was in there. So a few days later, the office called us at home and said, hey, come and pick up your prize, which we did, which turned out to be 1,034 Jolly Ranchers, which is about 1,020 more than any one family needs of Jolly Ranchers. So the third thing we decluttered this day was a giant bucket of candy. Obviously, most people are not gonna have a giant bucket of candy that they need to declutter, but we almost all have these weird, random things that I refer to as things I don't know what to do with. And I usually try a few different things when I'm tackling things like this. First, I start by asking around, asking if anybody wants them or, what I could do with them. And more specifically, in this case, I put a poll on Instagram asking for suggestions about what I could maybe use them for. A lot of people suggested Halloween. However, it would take me probably 10 Halloweens to get rid of this many Jolly Ranchers. A few other people suggested contacting our school and seeing if the teachers wanted them to give out like to kind of for prizes and stuff for the kids, which I loved, so I did that. However, our particular school wasn't able to accept them just because of a choking hazard, which I can totally see and I totally understand. However, luckily I have a friend who is a high school teacher in our area, and she actually reached out and said, hey Marianne, if no one else wants these, I would love to have them. My kids love having them in the classrooms. So I had Leo fill one jar of candies for us to keep at home, and the rest got taken to a high school for a bunch of teenagers to enjoy. I remember when I finally decided that was probably the best route for us, and I was really nervous to tell Leo, hey Leo, like I think we should give these to the high school teacher because he technically won them. They were his prize, they were his to enjoy. So when I brought up the idea to him, hey, we could give these to another high school, he goes, okay, yeah. Like no emotion, did not care. He looked at me like, what do I care, Mom? So just a little great reminder that although we want to respect our kids' things, obviously, and our kids' decisions, with a lot of things, they might care a lot less than we think. Next up was something that was super simple, but that I had been avoiding. Earlier this year, my husband and I finally switched from instant coffee to a classic coffee maker, mainly so that I could wake up and it was already made for me, which sounds really lazy when I say it out loud. So we went ahead and thrifted a secondhand coffee maker, and for months it worked great. However, a couple of months ago, it started to leak out of the bottom, and we couldn't figure out like what was happening or what was going wrong. We'd only paid $15 for this coffee maker, and we didn't even know if it could be fixed. So we thought, you know what, let's just use the drill. Scott used his hand drill to take off the bottom. We thought, you know, it's worth a shot. He found the little tube that had the hole in it, and so he took it, he drove to Home Depot, and he went to see if he could just find a replacement that he could repair it himself. However, when he got there, there was no tube that was the exact size that was heat resistant, which obviously we needed for a coffee maker because it gets hot. So this left us with an old broken coffee maker, which is number 4 on my list of things I decluttered. I knew the coffee maker was essentially just garbage, but I had been avoiding it because of the guilt of just adding it to the landfill. This falls into a category that I like to call things I have been avoiding. And there is one thing I normally try to do when I'm tackling things like this. I do whatever I can to essentially soften the blow. Whatever I can do to feel less icky or stressed or emotional about whatever I'm getting rid of. And in this case, that meant taking apart the old coffee maker so that we could send part of it to scrap metal, part of it to hazardous waste. We could donate the coffee pot, and then I knew there was a little bit less going to the landfill. Maybe it's a bit extreme and maybe it didn't do much for the planet. However, being human, which means emotional creatures that we are, this made me feel like 10% better, which helped me to finally let go of this item and maintain this clutter-free home. If you're struggling with items that you've been avoiding, just spending like 2 minutes and just thinking, hey, what can I do to make this like a little bit easier on myself can go a long way. So that's it, guys. 4 categories of clutter. A few of them things that I had been putting off for a while that are now out of the house in under an hour. Remember that sometimes decluttering does mean spending 8 hours in a crawl space going through boxes. But other times, it's just dedicating 60 minutes on a random Saturday to finally get out a bunch of stuff that has been weighing you down. If you end up decluttering this week, let me know what you're letting go of in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching and following along, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.